Well, yeah, let's stick with the US now. And you recall in April when the media were having an absolute meltdown, blaming Donald Trump for destroying the economy with his tariffs, crashing the stock market.
Out front tonight, the breaking news, a wipeout. $2.5 trillion today gone in the rout on Wall Street in response to Trump's trade war against 185 countries.
Well, the news is all good now. The S&P 500 is at a record high. But Kosha, have a look at how the media is reporting it. Let's have a look at the New York Times first. They just can't help themselves. Even the good news is presented in some sort of a negative light, talking there about Trump's turmoil. But the reality is that despite what the experts told us about these tariffs being enormously inflationary, about them crashing the share market, crashing the economy, that has not been the experience thus far.
It has not. I think the S&P is something shy of 3 percentage points above where it was on Inauguration Day. Granted, it did go through a lot of volatility, big downward swings and upswings, but it's generally normalizing as people are getting used to Trump 2.0. Also, the market, the S&P is not the biggest driver, biggest thing that Trump is playing to this time around because it doesn't really focus in every man.
Exactly.
And then the tariff revenue is coming in to the tune of $150 billion or so to date. And predictions ranged from about 300 to 500 billion per year that would come from this, the External Revenue Service, as Trump branded it. So we're about 1/3 to 1/5 of the way there already, if you believe those estimates. And you're absolutely right. It did not trickle down into mass inflation on every good everywhere, maybe a little bit here and there. But by and large, the markets and the supply chain tend to absorb those increases before they pass it on. It's not a straight line pass through to the American consumer because the American consumer market is the most valuable, desirable market in the world. That was Trump's thesis. It had never been tried before in modern economic times. He's trying it, and it seems to be working.
Well, let's hear a little bit more about the billions in new revenue coming in through these tariffs. Some 121 billion so far. Here is CNBC.
How much we've been collecting in revenues. And I did this in part because Wilfred's here and he can talk about the UK trade deal. But just this is the monthly numbers. And they have gone up a lot. June is actually set for another big increase of 27 billion. That is money coming into U.S. coffers from tariffs. We are collecting a lot of revenue. So far, guys, $121 billion has flowed into the U.S. government since the start of the fiscal year.
And that is, in the eyes of Americans, a big win, Kosha. Trump was elected on an America First platform, and this is precisely what he said he was going to deliver. I still remember, because it was only a few weeks ago, the enormous meltdown. We saw it right here in Australia. Every so-called expert saying that this is economically irresponsible, it can't work. And yet it is working, and pretty much as he explained it would.
100%. I think the fall from grace of so-called experts has been second to none in recent times on everything. And something like basic economics or just modern economics even is not something that there can be an expert in because it has never been tried in this way, at least in the last half century, if not longer. There have been some examples here and there, like Ronald Reagan was charging tariffs on the motorcycle category to save Harley Davidson, which he did do. But by and large, it was never done in this way. And Trump has been talking about it for 40 years, well before he entered politics. He now has the bully pulpit. He's done it. And the principle, again, is simple, that the most desirable consumer market in the world is the U.S. If you want access to that market, you've got to pay a toll on the way in. And it seems to be working, and at least that CNBC journalists seem to be pretty measured and even-keeled about it, and maybe even a little bit pleasantly surprised.
Now, the White House has announced that President Trump will be in Florida for the opening of Alligator Alcatraz. Yes, that's what we're calling it. Here is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
On a scheduling note, tomorrow, President Trump will travel to the great state of Florida to attend the opening of a new illegal alien detention center located at Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport alongside Secretary Kristi Noem, Governor Ron DeSantis, Congressman Byron Donalds, and other state and local leaders. We hope to see many of you there. The facility is in the heart of the Everglades and will be informally known as Alligator Alcatraz.
Kosha, what do you make of alligator Alcatraz? I can't imagine too many Democrats going and protesting on its gates. It sounds pretty ominous.
I think they might think twice before running their pickets for that one. You know, this thing hits every note of what the Trump administration is about. Immigration and really mass deportations of illegals is the centerpiece of his policy agenda. As we all know, Florida is one of the best run states in the country and has been very cooperative with the federal government in trying to execute this immigration agenda, unlike other states, sanctuary cities, et cetera, that try to stymie it. Then you've got the optics of Trump himself visiting, Kristi Noem, DeSantis going to be there in the Florida Everglades, where it physically is surrounded by swamps that have lots and lots of alligators and pythons over there, which is sort of this natural moat. And you can just see Trump and his Truth Social and all of that is going to make hay from this. Get ready for some interesting and funny tweets out of there. But more importantly, I think it's just the imagery of it really is going to stick in the minds of people about what he's trying to do with getting illegals out in cooperation with states and holding them in detention centers that are not meant to be pleasant.
Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, that's just genius, I've got to say. Whoever came up with that, kudos. Now, sticking with prisons, let's have a look at how the president of El Salvador responded to footage out of Paris Fashion Week, which was a show by Willy Chavarria, a Mexican-American designer, protesting against El Salvador's super prisons. First, let's have a look at the show. And here is how the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, responded. He wrote, "We are ready to ship them all to Paris whenever we get the green light from the French government." He doesn't mess around, Kosha. And it's no denying the Western media, all the activist class, the academics hate what's happening in El Salvador, but he is enormously popular, possibly the most popular leader in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. Huge approval ratings of like 90%. He got reelected resoundingly the second time. His prison, super prison as it's called, is famous around the world. The U.S., obviously, the Trump administration has even had contracts with him to send some of those deportees to him. He's also cut from a different cloth of this new form of leader, whether it's him or Javier Milei or Trump or Farage, as we discussed. They're different, but they basically, they're sharp-tongued, they're quick-witted. They don't take any of this nonsense from the media. They reframe the narrative and flip it around very effectively, and they're tough in terms of their governance policies, and he certainly exemplifies that.
Kosha Gator, always a pleasure. Thanks for your time tonight.